So this is a long overdue recording. And as I'm looking at the movies that I want to talk about today, I'm realizing just how long overdue it is. Because I'm about to embark on a journey of covering movies that came out in August of 2025. The timestamp of this recording, it's currently January 24th, 2026. So I'm about 5 months behind schedule here. The point of this recording is, well, I guess I should introduce the show, podcast, whatever you want to call it. This is kind of like a test, I guess, for the new show called One Please. That's going to be on the Third Unit Movies feed everywhere. Spotify, any podcast platform, YouTube, all those fun things. The kind of conceit behind this show is that I want to talk about contemporary movies, and I want to talk about them pretty regularly. I plan on trying to do one of these recordings on a weekly basis and talk about new released movies. If you're at all familiar with Third Unit Movies, I don't even know if I introduced myself. Hi, my name's Jason Keefe, host of Broken Reel, also a podcast on Third Unit Movies, or under Third Unit Movies. I don't really know what that vernacular is. So this is One Please. I'm Jason Keefe. Broken Reel is a podcast. This is One Please, a different podcast. I want to talk about movies. Funny enough, I don't know. When I was spitballing ideas for the name of this show, I eventually came to the conclusion that One Please would be apt because of all my esteemed co-hosts on the other show, Broken Reel, and other friends and many people that I've talked to. You know, they all have lives and can't quite commit to seeing a new release movie every single week, which is completely justifiable. Don't get me wrong. But this is a creative endeavor that I want to hold myself accountable to, you know? So my goal is to basically see a new release movie every week, probably every Thursday, if I can help it. And what I would really like to do is kind of see it early, generate some buzz, maybe put like a short out around it, do this recording regarding the movie. And kind of the goal is to like educate listeners, hopefully, on the film more than just what you see in, say, the trailer or what you see in the marketing of the movie. Like, a thought that I had pretty recently is I don't think a lot of filmmakers get enough credit for the hard work that they put in to making these sometimes gigantic pieces of cinema that are just like awe-inspiring, or all the way down to like a tiny little art house film, you know? I mean, what is in common with every single movie that you've seen in a movie theater? And it is probably that as soon as the credits start rolling, every single person gets up and leaves the theater, you know, with the exception of your post-credit sequences in Marvel movies and stuff like that. But like, as soon as the credits of movies start rolling, people are out. And I understand nobody wants to sit around and watch and read, and you can't even read, you know, most of the names because they're flying by so fast, or slow, but with like 1,000 names on screen at a time. But I want to try to shed some light on some more of these key creators of some of what are going to soon be some people's favorite movies as we get into the year of 2026 and so on and so forth. The comparison I was thinking about is with music. I haven't listened to a lot of new music lately because I've been spending a lot of my free time watching more movies and kind of educating myself that way. But for the few musicians or artists or bands that I follow, you know, I follow them because I'm invested in their story. And, you know, some of these people are like people you grow up with. They might be close to you in age. You might have similar beliefs. You might even meet these people, you know, depending on the size of the act or something like that. And I'm disregarding the idea of things like parasocial relationships that is, I guess, kind of, I don't know, I won't say a hot topic, but like people have polarizing ideas about things like that. It's like sometimes you feel like you know these people, or I guess more importantly, it's like a good artist can convey something in their art, probably that they have experienced, and you can take that thing and you can apply it to your life in something that you have experienced as well. And it might even been almost a carbon copy of what these people have experienced, and you feel the same feelings that they had, and maybe you've experienced very similar experiences that they've had. And that's kind of like an unbelievable thing when you think about it, to be able to connect with somebody else, probably somebody that you don't know, but be able to connect to them on like this invisible frequency just by listening to or seeing or watching or experiencing their art. You know, the light filters through them like some kind of prismatic device, and then you see it. When you talk about inspiration, the art or experience is filtered through one individual and experienced by another individual. And then if that second person is an artist, they're obviously inspired by, the prime person. And then they make their own art through their own eyes, and so on and so forth. And I mean, that is just inspiration. Or you listen to any interview with like Hollywood filmmakers, and they talk about how, stealing is a nasty word, but it's like, oh yeah, I saw that and I stole that from this movie from the 40s, and I stole that from this movie from the 60s. But all of these ideas and lines and camera shots and all that stuff it's inspiration. It's I don't even know where I'm going. I'm totally rambling at this point. Nevertheless, this podcast is an excuse for me to talk about movies. And I'm probably going to talk about a lot of movies. And I'm going to be primarily talking about new release movies and trying to generate some hype, I guess, around those. Not that they need the help, but because I want people to be excited to see movies. And more importantly, I want people to be excited to go see movies in movie theaters, because the movie theater experience is absolutely dying, and I don't want it to die. I think seeing a movie in a theater is like obviously far and away the best way to experience a movie, especially something like a big blockbuster. But seeing something and experiencing it with a crowd of other people for the first time, and kind of having that communal aspect, is just like, there's something that you can't put a price tag on that kind of thing. And I understand that like sometimes you go to movie theaters, and nowadays sometimes it can be terrible. People on their phones, just a lot of theaters nowadays are like serving food. So you just have like employees walking up and down the aisles, sometimes with lights on, just like totally kind of interrupting the vibe, if you will, of the movie. But like, when I don't have a lot of experiences with it, but it happens, right? And it's not just movies, it's other things. But like when something happens on the screen that nobody's expecting, and you get a knee-jerk reaction from an entire audience, whether it's a horror movie or a really touching like romantic sequence in some kind of movie, or just like an epic fucking action sequence, where the good guy finally gets the bad guy, and like the crowd can't help but cheer or just be excited. The hairs on the back of my neck are like, just they're doing a little twinge right now. I'm like trying to generate the idea behind that. It's like, you don't get that. Yeah, I mean, obviously you don't get that when you just sit at home and fucking rent the nth movie this week on Amazon Prime, and then just like, oh yeah, I never caught fucking Unstoppable. Yeah, let me watch that movie. It's got Denzel in it, and it's about a train, and it's by the guys that made Top Gun. And then 2 hours pass, and then you're just like, oh yeah, I watched that movie. It's fine. But like, I don't know, a movie like that is probably extremely exciting to see in a movie theater, especially like something with crazy action set pieces and something really loud. Good movie that I saw this year was F1, the Brad Pitt Formula One racing movie. I went to go see that movie in Dolby at one of the local AMCs here. And that movie just fucking rips. I mean, the entire movie is, say, good. Maybe a little bit better than good. But when you sit down that seat and the title sequence starts, and Brad Pitt just like wakes up from sleeping, and they throw him right into a race, you're already going like 150 miles per hour. And then Whole Lotta Love by Led Zeppelin just starts blaring as he's ripping around this racetrack. I'm just like, this is why I come to the fucking movies. If I was at home and watch that, and God forbid, you're somebody that has kids or doesn't have a lot of time in the day to catch a movie or something, and you just like pop this on a fucking 40-inch TV in your spare bedroom on low volume so you don't wake the kids, like you're robbing yourself of the experience that is this movie. And it's like, there is only I almost just quoted the Nicole Kidman AMC ad, but like, truly, there is only one place that you can go to experience cinema to its full extent. And it fucking, I mean, don't get me wrong, I stream a shitload of movies. I'm watching way more movies at home than I am in a theater, but I still make the point to go to the theater pretty much every week. And I'm so excited to see movies, especially new movies in theaters. Actually, especially old movies in theaters. Movies that I haven't had the ability to see in theaters because I was not born when the movie came out or just was too young to catch it in theaters, and getting certain movies with anniversaries, Back to the Future, Lord of the Rings, things like that are like being shown in movie theaters again. And being able to see those is fucking awesome. Like, sure, I'll watch them at home, but I've never seen it in the theater before. It's a completely different experience. I want to excite people about going back to movie theaters. And it seems like it catches on. Maybe, I don't know if it's in waves. It's like the memeability, right, of certain things to a certain degree, I guess, for certain audiences. Because like I feel like it's very popular with the younger generations, I suppose. I'm not old. I'm not young. I'm only 32. But like, I went to go see the third Sonic the Hedgehog movie, and there was a post-credit sequence, and it introduced like two characters that we hadn't seen yet. And there was, I mean, like, first of all, 75% of the audience was younger than I was in that theater. And I grew up with Sonic the Hedgehog. I don't hate it, but I don't like actively love it, you know? I'm like, fuck it. You know, I'm going to go see this movie. It's about this fucking IP that I grew up with and had a good time with. I've got nothing else going on a Thursday night. And it's got Jim Carrey in it. I'm going to go see this movie. Anyway, so many young kids, so many teenagers, and probably young adults, maybe low 20s were there. And they lost their shit in the post-credit sequence of that movie. And you ever experience like secondhand embarrassment? I was experiencing like the secondhand high off of those kids being so excited about like a character reveal in a post-credit scene to the third movie in the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise, the live action Sonic the Hedgehog franchise. Like, it's crazy. Or obviously, what's the big one is in fucking Endgame, Avengers Endgame. And if you were able to see that in the theaters, or maybe you saw like audience reaction clips of it after the fact, but like when they find Thanos at the end and Steve Rogers picks up Mjolnir, like, lights out. That fucking killed across the nation. Every single fucking theater erupted when that shit happened. And sure, they had like a lot of movies and a lot of years of build up to certain moments. But I mean, for Sonic, you know, it was like fucking 4 or 5 years of movies. It doesn't necessarily, you don't necessarily need to wait 25 years or 20 years or whatever, how long the MCU was, to get like a payoff like that. But shit like that is just like, you don't forget that, you know? I don't know, man. I just love movies. I love watching movies, and I love sharing movies too. I love like being able to introduce, probably secondary to being in a communal space, and ideally like a respectful communal space, and having that like, oh shit moment, or that really impactful emotional moment or something where everyone in the theater is just caught off guard and is just jaws on the floor. Second to that is showing some of my favorite movies to my friends and family and loved ones, and being able to be there in person and like witness their reaction is fantastic. That's like the best case scenario. If not, you're just like recommending movies to people, and if you're lucky, they'll text you back and just be like, wow, that movie was actually really good. I'm like, yeah, I know, right? I just love sharing that shit. It's almost, it's like, it's not quite like I was talking about earlier, you know, it's not quite artistic inspiration, inspiring another artist, and so on and so forth. But it is kind of like in that vein where artistic inspiration inspires an artist. They filter that through their lens, and then they make a movie. And then I watch the movie and I filter it through my lens and my experience. And I'm not making a movie, but I can show it to someone and they can see that. Like, oh, I mean, I feel like forever, since the beginning of time, there's always like some kind of adage where it's like, you can tell what kind of person someone is by the state of their house or what kind of car they drive. You know, my whole thing is, I feel like I can I mean, I haven't really put this into practice, but I feel like I could maybe articulate what someone's personality would be like based off of some of their favorite movies, and vice versa. You know, I like sharing some of my favorite movies to some of my friends and family and loved ones in hopes that, I guess, it like explains the unexplainable bits of me, you know? It doesn't have to be unexplainable bits, but like, just it can include the unexplainable bits, I suppose. And being able to share that is like, I don't know, it's awesome. It's awesome. I think I've covered most of everything in my notes here. I think we're going to move on and try my damnedest to recall the memories of some of these movies that I watched in August and late 2025, and just briefly talk about them. And I mean, by now, hey, maybe they're on streaming, and if any of it sounds interesting to anybody listening, then maybe you go rent the movie. There might actually, a couple of these might, even as I get newer, as I work my way through them, a couple of these might still be in theaters. So way back in the day, in August of 2025, I wanted to start this project, essentially. And the first movie that I went out to go see that I wanted to talk about was Highest to Lowest. This is Spike Lee's reinterpretation of Akira Kurosawa's High and Low, the 1963 movie. This movie stars Denzel, who is no stranger to working with Spike. And Denzel kills it. I mean, as he does in most things. But the entire movie is just like, okay, you know? It's also got Jeffrey Wright. It's also got A$AP Rocky. It was written by a gentleman named Alan Fox. To be honest, I have no idea who that is. Produced by Apple. Or not produced by Apple. Produced by A24. Distributed by Apple. So I think you can catch this on Apple TV Plus right now. So like a brief synopsis of the movie, if you're not familiar with the original. I'll give you a synopsis of Highest to Lowest specifically, because like I said, it's a reinterpretation. So it's like a more contemporary version of High and Low. That came out in the 60s. This came out in 2025. Synopsis for Highest to Lowest is: when a Titan music mogul is targeted with a ransom plot, he is jammed up in a life or death moral dilemma. Jammed up. That's funny. So basically, Denzel plays the music mogul, and he's a very powerful man in the music industry, and more specifically in New York City, where most of Spike Lee's movies take place. And so, and this is essentially one for one to the original High and Low. So basically, he's really powerful, has a lot of money, and someone feels like he has been slighted by him in some way. We all know who. And so there's a kidnapping plot, basically, to kidnap Denzel's kid and get the ransom money for it. Only there's a little twist, which is not like a huge twist. Like, I'm sure they probably reveal this in the trailer. Basically, Jeffrey Wright, who plays Spike Lee's, like, I don't know what to call him, PA, or just his driver, maybe. He's a friend, but also like an employee of Denzel. And there's clearly like a little bit of a power dynamic between the two of them. Denzel definitely respects him, but Jeffrey Wright is also kind of like submissive to him in a way, because Jeffrey Wright basically owes Denzel. And so what happens is the kidnappers accidentally kidnap Jeffrey Wright's kid instead, because they're like the same age. They're on the same basketball team or something. And they like, whatever, in this movie, they like traded headbands or something. So kidnappers kidnap the wrong kid, basically. And they're threatening to kill him unless Denzel pays them money. And so now Denzel, like the synopsis said, is in this moral dilemma where when it was his kid, when he thought that his kid was kidnapped, he was prepared to pay the money, and that's it. Roll credits. But then his kid shows up and comes home, and they're like, holy shit, you're safe. And then Jeffrey Wright's like, where's my son, though? And then comes to find out that they do indeed have a kid kidnapped, and it was Jeffrey Wright's son. And now Denzel doesn't seem so eager to spend the money to save Jeffrey Wright's kid, now that he knows it's not his kid. So basically, Denzel and Jeffrey Wright and a few others are working with these kidnappers, and they start to agree to their terms, basically. And they're going to pay them the money eventually. And some shit goes sideways. They figure out some information about who this might be or why this might be. And they basically go to investigate. And at this point, the movie does kind of turn on its head. I think the first 75%, 80% of this movie is kind of just like a kidnap thriller. And the last 20% of it is actually fucking an awesome, like, not cop, but like buddy cop action movie. Because once they find out who the kidnapper was, Denzel and Jeffrey Wright just like go rolling through New York, and they're like, we're gonna fuck this guy up, you know. And they're fucking mean about it because they done fucked up. And so they find out where this guy is, played by A$AP Rocky, and Denzel goes into this studio to find A$AP Rocky recording. And if I remember correctly, it was basically like A$AP Rocky gave him a mixtape, and Denzel was like, nah, you ain't good enough. And then ASAP Rocky was like, fuck you, I am good enough. And then went to kidnap his kid or whatever. Crazy. That escalated quickly. But then Denzel goes up, finds him, and then the fucking craziest thing ever happens, and they fucking have a rap battle. And not like 8 Mile rap battle, but it is basically a proper rap battle, as Denzel sitting at the board, the mixing board, and ASAP Rocky is in the studio, and they're basically trying to figure out what's going on. But Denzel's got him, and Denzel's trying to like lay some wisdom on him, and ASAP Rocky's not having any of it. And so they have a rap battle, which, I mean, I thought was hilarious. Not hilarious, but it was like, I don't know how to describe it. It wasn't funny in the traditional way, and it wasn't hilarious in the way that it was like super bad. But I was just like, by the end of this movie, I was just like clapping my hands. I'm just like, Spike, you've done it again. Like, fantastic. There's something, the movie itself is not phenomenal. And never mind certain decisions made in like the cinematography. There's some shots where like Denzel is blatantly against like a green screen and stuff, and it's just like it doesn't look very good in some parts of it. But I can't help but just appreciate and honor the artistic integrity of Spike, I guess. And I mean, there's gotta be something to be said for that. Like, not every, I don't have a connection with every single filmmaker that makes a good or a bad film, but like Spike Lee's a real one. Let's be honest. Like, he's made some of the greatest movies ever. And so I was excited to go see this movie. And I think by the time I had gone and seen it anyway, like it had pretty middling reviews, but that shit's not going to stop me from going to see the new Spike Lee movie starring Denzel. Like, are you fucking kidding me? Yeah. So, I mean, I've already spoiled most of this movie. And if I'm being honest, I don't even fucking remember how it ends after the rap battle, but the rap battle happens and it's pretty exciting. This to me seems like a decent enough movie for at least one watch, especially if you are familiar with Spike's other works and knowing that it's available on Apple TV Plus. Like, I'm sure a fair amount of people probably can just like turn this on a Saturday night and just chill out for 2 hours or so. It was all right, I don't know if it's certainly not Spike's best. It's probably not even close to Spike's best work, if I'm being honest. But I think it was a fun watch. So let's move on. The following week, I went to go see the new Ethan Coen, Trisha Cook joint, which is, I believe, the second movie in their lesbian B movie trilogy, they're calling it. So this is Honey Don't. And this is coming out hot off the heels of Drive Away Dolls that came out just the year prior. This movie has Margaret Qualley, Aubrey Plaza, Chris Evans, and Charlie Day in it. If you watch a trailer of this movie, you basically get everything you need to get from this movie. There's like an attempt at like a twist in terms of like the resolution of it, and it's just like it's pretty not entertaining in any way, shape, or form. And I love the Coen brothers. They've made some of the greatest movies of all time. I honestly don't know, besides this and Drive Away Dolls, I don't know if this is Ethan Coen's only outing not working with Joel. But this was just wet noodle, one ply wet toilet paper. There was not really anything here other than just like enjoying the characters of Margaret Qualley, Aubrey Plaza, Chris Evans, and Charlie Day, Charlie Day is only in the movie. He's got like less than 5 minutes of screen time, I feel like. Let me read you the synopsis of this real quick. A small town private investigator delves into a series of strange deaths tied to a mysterious church. There's not much to say here. I wouldn't call it a whodunit, but it's like a crime thriller, I guess, if you will. I don't know. I guess it is kind of like whodunit. Margaret Qualley's the detective. She plays the titular Honey, and she's the one investigating this murder. Charlie Day is like on the police force as well. I don't know if he's her captain or what, but he doesn't really have any significance in the movie at all. Chris Evans plays like a righteous, but also extremely, but he plays like a pastor basically. And he abuses his power to just sleep with a bunch of women in his church. So he's a scumbag. And then Aubrey Plaza also works at the police station, and then a little bit of a romance starts to develop between Aubrey Plaza and Margaret Qualley. I don't think I spoiled that seeing as this is part of the lesbian B movie trilogy. You should have expected that the two women in this movie were going to get together in some way, shape, or form. They do. This movie's not very good, and it's upsetting. I'm thinking about how I was just talking about highest to lowest and how I'm going to talk about these movies in the future. And I don't really have anything set in stone at the moment. I don't know if I ever will, but let's just put it this way. Highest to lowest is at least worth a watch. You know, if you have Apple TV, or if you can get a free trial and you're interested in Spike's movies, I think it's worth a watch. I don't think anybody should waste their time on Honey Don't. Like, this movie just is not very entertaining. There's not any particularly fantastic performances. There's not really anything I can remember that was really exciting. Oh, here we go. I'll tell you what. The most redeeming quality about this movie is that it's 89 minutes long. I'm really not trying to... I really don't want to dissuade. I mean, okay. I want people to go to movie theaters. And I want people to love movies and love experiencing movies in cinema. But that doesn't mean that bad movies don't exist. However, if I can educate people on what to see, that would make me more happy, because I don't want people spending their hard-earned money on pieces of shit. Honey Don't is not good. It's not in theaters anymore, but unless it's on a stream, no, I take it back. I won't even say that. I won't even say if it's on a streaming service and you have 93 minutes, just give it a watch. I promise you, you're not missing anything. Sorry, Ethan and Trisha. And sorry, Margaret and Aubrey. Those are two really, fun individuals to watch on screen. And this movie just didn't do them or their characters justice in any way. Chris Evans was kind of fun now that he's finally outside the MCU. Charlie Day, don't get me wrong, I love Sunny. It's one of my favorite shows of all time. But between Charlie in this movie and his directorial debut that came out a few years ago, I already forget what that's called. I don't really need to see him in other things. Unfortunately, he has become Charlie Kelly, and that's really all he needs to do. Oh, I take that back. He's decent as Luigi in the Super Mario Bros. Movies. That's a fun time. Obviously he's got a unique voice, so that can take him places. In terms of his on-screen persona, though, he unfortunately now, after doing Sunny for like 20 years or whatever, he is just now Charlie Kelly, and him in Fool's Paradise and this movie are just didn't need to be him. Could have been anyone else. I don't really think I need to talk about this movie anymore. I don't want to be a bummer. So let's move on. Okay. Wow, we're at 37 minutes already. This one's going to be probably, I have no idea how long these recordings are going to be. I also don't even know how much I'm going to go back and edit them. This is unfiltered, but we're at 38 minutes right now, and I still got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-ish, 6-ish more movies I'm going to talk about. I could probably speed up the pace a little bit. I don't anticipate future episodes being nearly as long. I'm kind of catching up on a bunch of things right now and just kind of feeling out what I want to do for this show going forward. So this is all kind of a road test anyway. Anyway, next movie I'm going to talk about is Caught Stealing. This is the new Darren Aronofsky flick. Not written by him, but based on a book by Charlie Huston, I guess. I don't know, Huston or Houston. Based on the book by Charlie Huston. And then the screenplay was also written by Charlie Huston. So we are at least 1 for 1 on the adaptation of the source material. Darren Aronofsky directed this, and it stars Austin Butler, Regina King, Zoe Kravitz, Matt Smith, Liev Schreiber, Vincent D'Onofrio, Benito Martinez Ocasio, sorry I'm probably butchering that, Griffin Dunn, and Carol Kane. We love Carol Kane. Let me read you the synopsis for this movie as well. When his neighbor asks him to take care of his cat, a former baseball prodigy now working as a bartender finds himself in the middle of gangsters without knowing why. He must use all his cunning to survive and understand what is happening. That's it. And that explains all of it. Again, Austin Butler had like some kind of bad injury while he was on his way to becoming a professional baseball player. His shit got fucked up. Now he's bartender. Matt Smith is his neighbor, who's like a shitty guy, dealings with drugs and all that, shady shit. He's got to watch his cat. And then basically just because Austin Butler is standing outside his apartment door at one time, he runs into some gangsters that are looking for his neighbor, played by Matt Smith. And within 5 seconds, he gets whipped into a frenzy and just like thrown into this whole New York City seedy underbelly, drug trafficking, gangster mob killing, fucking just like absolute nightmare of a few days. This movie was, at least, it was a fun time. Don't get me wrong. I was not expecting what this movie was for it being an Aronofsky film. But again, this wasn't written by Aronofsky. Aronofsky's other movies include Requiem for a Dream, some to list some. He wrote and directed Requiem for a Dream. It's obviously an incredibly fucked up movie, but entertaining. I guess I'll say. He directed Black Swan, which that was the Mila Kunis, Natalie Portman ballet joint. I feel like it had I don't know if it won any Academy Awards. Was at least nominated for Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actress, Best Cinematography, and Best Film Editing. Oh no, with Portman winning Best Actress. Yeah. But he didn't write Black Swan, just directed it, but that's okay. Wrote and directed Mother, another incredibly fucking just wacky movie. That was the one with, I think, Javier Bardem and Jennifer Lawrence. And he directed The Whale. That was the Brendan Fraser's comeback a few years ago. So he's kind of just off and on with the writing, directing credit or just directing credit. So I don't know what that's about. Anyway, he directed Caught Stealing. It wasn't nearly as Aronofsky as I thought it was going to be, to put it plainly. But it was still a fun romp through New York. Had some good comedic elements, some fun action sequences. I do feel like there were a few things that, because it's Aronofsky and he's got, I will say, an interesting filmography. I feel like there were a few things I was able to pick out that were like, oh, that's just like, this is Aronofsky. He's choosing to do this in this adaptation. So similar to Highest to Lowest, it's like, you kind of respect the hustle from the artist's point of view. The adaptation is what I'll call respectable, but not phenomenal, not fantastic. Fun romp. Liev Schreiber and Vincent D'Onofrio playing the Jewish mafia is hilarious. There's a lot of good comedy and cameos and just like the writing is pretty fun in this movie. Pretty witty and pretty entertaining for sure. I feel like I could probably recommend this one the most out of the three we talked about. Honey Don't, we're just going to basically forget about. Highest to Lowest, I think with some context could be interesting to some people. This is probably the most palatable out of the three of them so far. It's just an action movie for what it's worth. It's got some stakes. It's got some comedy. It's got some action. It's got some drama. It's got some romance. And then that's it. And then it's over. And it was fun. It was fine. Let's move on. Okay. Jeez. The next movie we're gonna talk about is The Long Walk. This is the Stephen King adaptation by Francis Lawrence, written by J.T. Molnar. So this was fun. So to start, J.T. Molnar, I haven't caught his first feature film, Outlaws and Angels. That came out in 2016, and then there's a big gap. He did some short films, but he wrote and directed Strange Darling that came out in 2023, and I had a really good time with that movie. It wasn't phenomenal, but it was just a fun time, and it was a fun take on I don't know if I call it horror, but horror thriller. It was broken up in 6 chapters and told completely out of order, and it uses that structure to kind of just mess with the viewer's understanding of what's going on, to circumvent a couple things. So J.T. Molnar, J.T. Molnar, that's what we're talking about. Wrote and directed Strange Darling 2023. That was a fun time, horror, thriller, whatever you want to call it. Anyway, he wrote this movie, The Long Walk, which is, he wrote the screenplay. This is an adaptation of Stephen King's novel by the same name. And to briefly tell you about the director, Francis Lawrence, you'll also know him from a bunch of stuff. So his first movie actually is Constantine. Constantine was the Keanu Reeves leading comic book adaptation by Warner Brothers, about he's an exorcist, and in a comic book kind of way, he fights demons basically. Anyway, that was his first movie. I love that. That's a fun early 2000s flick. Constantine, I Am Legend, Water for Elephants. Haven't caught that one. But then he did most of the Hunger Games sequels. He directed Catching Fire, Mockingjay Part 1 and 2. He also did Red Sparrow, which I think is another Jennifer Lawrence film. And it looks like he's also doing the new Hunger Games movies as well. The sequel series, I guess if you want to call it. I think they're prequels. I honestly don't know. Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes and the upcoming Sunrise on the Reaping. So he did The Long Walk in 2025. Here's a synopsis for The Long Walk if you don't know about it. A group of teenage boys compete in an annual contest known as The Long Walk, in which they must maintain a certain walking speed or get shot. They just flat out tell you in the synopsis. Yeah, so this is like a dystopian, I don't know if I call it dystopian future, but it's like a dystopian near future, I guess. where one boy from each state in the United States enters this long walk competition, and basically they just need to walk in perpetuity, or they die. They don't know that signing up for it, or at least I don't think they do. No, they must know it, right? I think they know it, but they like really sell it when the first guy dies, right? They can't walk slower than 3 miles per hour, or else they get like a strike, and then you have to walk for like X amount of hours to remove a strike from your profile, I guess. Obviously they're walking through the night, so like there are a few scenes of just like them walking and sleeping at the same time, which I was just about to say I'm not entirely sure that's possible, but then I remember that sleepwalking is a thing, so I guess it is possible. I really enjoyed this movie, and I think it's kind of come to middling reviews, or maybe polarizing reviews. But there's something about this movie. I wouldn't say there's something there, because I know what it is. There's something about this movie that I really connect with, and that is the bond between Cooper Hoffman's character and David Johnson's character. Let me put it to you this way: The Lord of the Rings are some of my favorite books, movies, entertainment IP of all time. So I'm watching Cooper Hoffman and David Johnson's characters in this movie, which is essentially just like an epic journey, not with any end in place. They're not going anywhere. They're just walking forever, but they form a very close brother-like bond, and they help each other out throughout the entire movie. And they get to know each other very well. And, at the beginning of the movie, at the beginning of the story, they don't know shit about each other, and there's a lot of just like tense kind of relationships, allyships and enemy ships. I don't know if any of these are real words, but like, the boys in the long walk, some of them kind of like huddle up and like make their own clique, and then like some guys are just like, nah, we're gonna do this by ourselves, and then they're like, yeah, let's take those guys out, and then it like turns really malicious when certain people are trying to force other people to lose and be killed on sight, basically. It's a fun time. It's a really fun time, I thought. Like I was saying before, it stars Cooper Hoffman, David Johnson, a lot of other people that I'm not familiar with, but I'll give it to you. Garrett Waring, Tut Nyot, have no idea if I'm pronouncing that correctly, Charlie Plummer, Ben Wang, Jordan Gonzalez, Roman Griffin Davis, Josh Hamilton, with cameos by Judy Greer, who plays Cooper Hoffman's mother, and Mark Hamill, who plays the captain, the leader of the Long Walk. Basically, he's a military man, and he is the one in charge of the Long Walk. He is constantly screaming at them, telling them to walk faster. He's kind of like the instrument of their whole kind of destruction, so like he's not a good guy. This was a fun movie. Holy shit. I had just realized what time it was, and you may hear a snowblower in the background right now. I had plans to go see Sam Raimi's new movie, Send Help, so I had to go do that, and now I'm back 18 hours later finishing this recording, and it's still going very long, so I think I'm going to talk about one more movie and wrap this up, and then come back later and talk about a few more that I caught at the end of 2025. So this guy with the snowblower is just outside the window, scraping every rock ever. The last movie of 2025 that I wanted to bring up was A Big, Bold, Beautiful Journey. This one was really interesting. I think the selling point for me was something I hadn't known about before, which was that the screenplay was on something called the Blacklist. And I guess this is like a well-known thing in Hollywood. I had never heard of it, and apparently it's been around since mid-2000s, early 2000s. First Blacklist was in 2005. Apparently this is just like a website that you can go to, anybody can go to, create an account on, and upload a screenplay, a movie script, and filmmakers peruse the website, and every year they take a look at some of the top voted ones, and people like buy the rights to them, and they make movies. A few movies on recent Blacklists were, upcoming on the 2024 Blacklist is a movie called Tony, which I believe is a biopic about Anthony Bourdain, and that's gonna be done by Matt Johnson, who did Blackberry, and he's got the upcoming Nirvana, the band, the show, the movie coming out soon. In 2022, there was Eternity. That was like strangely enough, like a sci-fi rom-com that just came out in 2025, not too long ago. Madden, which is the upcoming Nick Cage biopic Nick Cage biopic. John Madden biopic starring Nick Cage. In 2021, Challengers. That was Luca Guadagnino. In 2024, the tennis movie with Zendaya and Josh O'Connor and like Feist. Either way, that movie was epic. So you can see that there's some. The blacklist is interesting because you've got essentially no-name people writing these screenplays and filmmakers finding them and purchasing them and making them into some movies to success, like, in my opinion, Challengers. That movie rocked. But then you also have movies from 2020, like The Woman in the Yard, that was actually brought up on an episode of Broken Reel recently, just like a horror movie about grief. The Gorge, which was a Apple TV movie with Miles Teller and Anya Taylor-Joy, that, as far as I'm concerned, didn't really do anything exciting. Flight Risk, that was the 2025 Mark Wahlberg vehicle with Topher Grace, and Mark Wahlberg tries to hijack his plane. That movie was not good. And A Big Bold Beautiful Journey on the 2020 blacklist finally came out in 2025. So the synopsis for this film is: two strangers who meet at a mutual friend's wedding have the chance to relive important moments from their pasts, illuminating the path that led them to the present and gaining the opportunity to change their futures. This movie is directed by the mononym Kogonada, who is probably best known for After Yang, that came out in 2021, which is like a sci-fi romance movie, if I'm not mistaken, also starring Colin Farrell. This movie was interesting, but from what it certainly didn't land the plane from what I remember. Again, this is 5 months later, but I think I was anticipating a lot with this movie, especially with Margot Robbie and Colin Farrell starring. And it was a fun, fantastical journey, but I didn't really feel like there was an emotional resolution to the movie. Did really well by the looks of it. No, I'm sorry. It did not do really well by the looks of it. I'm reading those backwards. Budget of $45 million, box office of $20 million. Also starring Kevin Kline and Phoebe Waller-Bridge. They were fun as some secondary characters. This was, I will say, from what I do remember about this movie, it looked incredible. I loved the colors. I loved the photography. Obviously, Colin Farrell and Margot Robbie are extremely radiant in everything they do. They're two extremely good-looking individuals. But it just didn't do it for me. I actually don't. This is one that I don't know how. I don't actually know how this one's getting reviewed, but it doesn't really mean anything. But as far as I'm concerned, I'm the only person I know that went to go see it. So that's not a good sign, I guess. Anyway, I guess that's the last movie I'm going to talk about because wow, 1 hour just then. I'm going to have to cut the shit out of this because these can't be an hour long. Granted, I've talked about like 5 movies and an introduction on this episode, but I think as time goes on, the goal is to cover one new weekly release every episode, which should lend itself to a much shorter episode and a much more in-depth episode, which is ultimately what I want. I want to dive into more of the filmmakers included in these newer films, so we can dive a little bit more into the writing and into the cinematography and into the music and things like that. But for now, I had planned on doing something like this for these movies months ago, so I figured I better just get my feet wet and start talking into a microphone. Yeah, so in the future, one new release per episode per week, but I think I'm also going to kind of use it as an excuse to also catch up on, or not catch up, but talk about the other movies that I've been catching up on. I've been on a killer 1980s run of movies lately, and these are kind of movies that I also want to talk about, just to get people excited. Or I think what I might do sometimes is I might like either rewatch certain old movies or old movies from a new director that might have a new movie coming out to kind of gear up for it, and that might kind of serve the conversation better around the new release after watching a few of their older movies. But like, man, in the last few weeks, I watched Castaway for the first time. These are all for the first time. Castaway, The Karate Kid, Total Recall, Enemy of the State, Basic Instinct, Ronin, Escape from New York, While You Were Sleeping, Crimson Tide, Back to the Future, Perfect Storm. Like, I'm just watching a lot of movies that I haven't seen before. So I'm excited to also kind of talk about those movies every week. Probably won't go nearly in depth with those, but this show is for one purpose only, and it's for me to gush about movies. So that's what I'm going to do. I guess that's it for this episode. And I'm going to immediately turn around and start recording another one about a few other movies that I saw in early 2026.